time for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. And we have Dr. Constance Ikoku ready to blaze the trail with what's in the offing.
Blazing the trail, indeed. Winga, good morning. You and
no,
words.
You know, I get a bit skeptical when you're on red. I don't know the judgment you're about to pronounce.
Really? Okay, calm down. I'm not INEC chairman. I'm a friendly colleague. We're here together. Good morning, Yolanda.
So pleasant to know that we're in safe hands.
Absolutely. Winga, come on. You are indeed in safe hands. No? Yolanda.
I'm good, thank you.
And how are you too?
Soon running out.
Yes.
So our work week is coming to an end.
It is. Yeah. Good to see everyone today.
Likewise.
All right, let's look at those stories that are shaping the agenda for you today. Let's kick off with this day newspaper. The stories dominating the headlines this morning we have from VIP police orderlies news to diplomacy over plane detentions overseas, governorship primaries, Nigeria's security apparatus, and foreign relations stance. All these and more remain central in public debate. This day newspaper has gone with the president's stance on police withdrawal, as he maintains that the force must protect the vulnerable, not big names. PDP chairman Kabiru Turaki meets 29 state chairman. He says the party is set to win Osun governorship election. And on his part, President Tinubu has asked APC Osun aspirants to work together. The window piece says Dangote refinery has raised petrol supply by 5.5 million liters daily and 11.48 million deficit. Amid the deficit, Daily Independent also leads with the police withdrawal order, which has sparked a row in the Senate. We know that the Senate raised concerns over what senators described as selective implementation in the directive. While some orderlies have been withdrawn, others believed to be attached to ministers, business figures, and celebrities remain with them, prompting demands for uniform compliance. The Senate is also seeking an exemption. And more on Osun State as Governor Ademola Adeleke emerges Accord Party 2026 governorship candidate. Not surprising at all. And on debt, the president raises a panel to probe 4 trillion naira owed 2,000 contractors. In Vanguard, uproar in the House of Representatives over motion to probe CBN's alleged non-remittance of 16.3 trillion naira. The central bank is under scrutiny for alleged failure to remit these large sums spanning several years. The motion in the House of Reps triggered a heated and chaotic session. New Telegraph points to Minister of Aviation announcing that the federal government has no power to fix prices in regard to those high fares we're seeing today. And Rivers State Governor Sim Fubara insists he has no disagreement with the State House of Assembly. Former Attorney General Abubakar Malami refutes EFCC probe and 46 bank account allegations. And fresh hurdle as Nigerians, others that want to go to the United States, may be asked for 5-year social media history before entry. Finally, in New Telegraph, doctors are warning that energy drinks might pose risk to stroke. Leadership this morning writes about petrol imports per day in November, which rose to 52.1 million liters. The French are digging into Nigeria as the Nigerian Federal Inland Revenue Service and French tax agency partner on digital transformation. And reactions have trailed the president's directive to National Security Advisor to arm forest guards. Omisore was absent as the president met with Osun governorship aspirants. We know why. The Punch reads about the federal government seeking 17.8 trillion naira loan to fund the 2026 budget. An ECOWAS court says Nigeria is a top among countries ignoring judgments as the federal government opens diplomatic talks with Burkina Faso over detained aircraft and soldiers. Also here, the U.S. Congress panel speaks on Nigerian IDP crisis reaffirming commitment to address religious persecution globally with a focus on Nigeria. Guardian newspaper tells us more about those high airfares, revealing that 54 taxes and other charges account for 35% of airfare cost. As Nigerians grappled with that, Ekiti State has joined the craze by states to build airports. It is said here that it is spending 49.7 billion naira to build a cargo airport. On to international newspapers. Let's see what we have there. Kicking off with Daily Telegraph, the paper leads with a call from President of Argentina, Javier Milei, urging the UK to leave its long-standing defense exports ban to Argentina. He says, those two countries have closer ties and they need to access British military technology. Financial Times reports that the U.S. Federal Reserve just cut interest rates to a 3-year low, its third consecutive rate cut, citing a softening job market outweighing inflation concerns. The Times' lead story centers on plans under the proposed Employment Rights Bill to require all employers to provide employees with Whitehall drafted guidance encouraging union membership. The Independent front page highlights findings from a report accusing the UK of operating a two-tier system in revoking citizenship, disproportionately affecting people of color. Daily Mirror focuses on social policy, with Labour Party pledging £3.5 billion to tackle homelessness. Daily Mail leads with a controversial trial by the UK's health service involving puberty-blocking drugs for about 220 children. And then more globally, the U.S. seized a large oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, highlighting renewed pressure on Venezuelan energy exports, with implications for global supply and oil price stability. Now let's return to this day to see what these headlines mean for everyday people. Very heated debate on the withdrawal of police for VIPs. Senate is seeking exemption, saying that the move could expose some senators to danger, and the president declaring that no, anyone that needs a police escort now has to seek specifically for clearance, and he's asked the police corps of the civil defense to replace police escorts like Benga.
Well, I see this as a catch-22 situation because of the prevailing security situation in the country. Almost all the big men in the country, we all know, and when they get to places, people extort money from them. But in as much as that is the situation, we also have a situation where that is meant to prompt these policymakers and leaders to practically do something to nip the escalating insecurity in the bud. The president have said that anyone who needs this, but I think the absence, what's missing all the year long is a diligent implementation of this withdrawal of police escort, because during the time of Tafa Balogun in 2003, we saw the call for the withdrawal. We saw another call for withdrawal during the time of Ogbonnaya Onovo in 2009. In 2010, we saw similar withdrawal. So we've been saying even that of Afiz Ringib in 2010 said he vowed to arrest, to detain, and also to prosecute defaulters that did not heed to this directive. In 2012, too, during the time of Muhammad Adamu, we saw similar call. In 2016, during the time of Solomon IGP Solomon Arase, we saw similar call. In 2020, we saw similar, even the IGP. So we wonder if presidential pronouncements, if executive pronouncement alone will do this. I think there's a need for an urgent legislation on this. So when we have that situation, the legislators will, because now it seems the National Assembly is still playing politics on state policing. So when they feel the brunt they would know the right thing to do, and they will bring a sense of urgency into it. In as much as the situation could put them as an endangered species. You wanted to add something?
Yes, I wanted to say that part of the argument as well is that the NSCDC does not have the right manpower for this alternative. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I mean, if there's no alternative, then how will this work out? Because I believe from the reports that were taken, the Senate has been crying foul.
I think the alternative is to nip this insecurity in the bud, to find a general solution
but then the
that will be beneficial to everyone.
It's been said that it's selective enforcement, because you still have entertainers who have police escorts. You still have, you know, other high-level dignitaries as well. So I mean, do you believe that it's selective in any way?
We talked about diligent implementation of this this order. So and that's why I feel that it needs a strong legislation rather than just mere executive pronouncements.
And strong alternatives as well.
There's an alternative. It has already said that, you know, you have the other security agencies that you can apply to get protection. I think since this has become a big public discussion, the sense is that the president can start this withdrawal from his own close associates. You know, for instance, his son. The other day we had, Professor Wole talking about the president's son, and they counted at least 15 armed police officers escorting him. He always moves around in overly long convoys. And what's that for? You know, is he an appointed official, or is he an elected official? You know, we know that, you know, certain individuals will need protection, whether it's now police officers or other agencies. But the fact is that, you know, it seems like he's overdoing it. So those that are close to the president, you know, also he has to start from there. And then the other thing is that there might be a need to define who is a VIP.
Right.
You know, because you say withdraw VIP, some will say I am VIP, the other people say we are not VIP. So who is a VIP in Nigeria? Is there, you know, a need to define who is a VIP, so we know who the select few people that still need a certain level of police protection? You know, that's number one. And number two, as you said, maybe we have to go beyond pronouncements to make sure that this actually is carried out, because previous pronouncements have not yielded, you know, the desired fruit. But it's a discussion that will continue for quite a bit of time in the country. Let's look at, in the interest of time, let's look at the second story, which is about the Minister of Aviation. He was summoned by the National Assembly concerning the rising airfares. And he has spoken out and said, you know what, the government cannot fix prices. This is a deregulated market. That's the framework that Nigeria is operating upon. So it will be difficult to begin to fix, you know, prices. He also explained that part of the problem is lack of competition. And why is that lack of competition? We have very limited access to aircrafts. So when you have limited access to aircraft, you know, and the local market is not big enough for competition, it is competition that will drive down the prices. So what do you have? You have these very expensive tickets. But also, we also had that story that talked about the charges, which is what the minister does not want to touch. So many charges by the federal government on tickets. So by the time you end up, by the time you end out of these taxes and charges, the tickets become very exorbitant. So it's a situation that it looks like the government is not able to do anything now.
And this is not the first time that we're seeing this. We had this case last year as well, when airfares went up to about 200,000, which is now the norm. It was about 200,000 from, I believe, about 80,000, and everybody, you know, was riled up about it, and we're talking about how unfair it is. But now you are looking at major routes with tickets varying between 400,000 naira and 650,000 one way. So what is done in that kind of situation? As much as the minister has a valid point in saying that, you know, the government cannot regulate this, at the same time,
don't think that's
it's quite
sufficient.
unfair on the everyday person.
I don't think that point that the government cannot regulate, because like like Dr. Constance mentioned, they have been a bit silent on the multiple taxation that these airline operators have been faced. So to say that they cannot regulate domestic air airfares is just convenient, because if you look, and also relying on the Cape Town agreement that is being signed, is to allow the market forces and bring in more aircraft. That will take a long time. They need something urgent. This is the first season that we are talking about, and the federal government should show some decisiveness in handling this matter.
Benga, let's not forget the situation in the country. We have such high levels of insecurity. If people cannot afford to fly back home to their villages, to wherever they want to go, how are people supposed to go around when the roads are unsafe to even travel on?
Well, the majority of people still travel by road, Yolanda. You know, these airfares that we're talking about, it's still a select few. It's not majority. Majority
Indeed.
Go by road.
But at least to those
in
affected.
this country.
But at least to those affected.
Because, you know, how many people can fly? Really, how many people can fly?
But
So
it's
still an elitist habit, actually, in Nigeria.
Indeed. Just to quickly add, we've not even talked about the cost of aviation fuel, which the government has control over. So if there is a subsidy or a kind of arrangement within this scheme, that would lighten the burden on domestic airline operators, and that will have a ripple effect on passengers boarding for their different destinations.
Right. Let's look at the third story in Daily Independent. Reps in row the session over alleged non-remittance of 16 trillion naira by Central Bank of Nigeria. The CBN was said to have failed to remit first 5.2 trillion naira in operating surplus and 11 trillion naira in government revenue collected through the remitter platform. This came to light through ongoing investigations into the Auditor General's 2022 report and the administration of the remitter revenue collection system between March 2015 and 2016 of April. As it stands, the CBN has all of this that it hasn't remitted. The presentation ignited debate in the House, with lawmakers divided over the next steps to take.
Right.
So some say, you know, some have demanded that the House summon the CBN governor, and if the CBN governor fails to appear, which in the past, in some cases, that has happened. If he fails to appear, that they will invoke every constitutional power within their means to compel his appearance. I mean, this is a big story that raises a couple of questions. You know, transparency and accountability. You know, there's crisis in public finance. This is what it's saying. If you have lack of full disclosure, it creates a gap that undermines fiscal transparency and distorts budget planning. It also raises questions about how these public funds are being managed and used. And then, secondly, we've always talked about forensic audit. Do we need a forensic audit in this instance to know specifically what the shortfall is and what can be done about that? And finally, what are the implications? You know, this contributes to the widening deficit that we have, because we're always looking for money to fund the budget. We have huge deficits. So, you know, all these things, these loopholes where monies are not accounted for, contributes to the budget deficit in the country. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think in a culture of impunity, when accountability is being demanded, it seems like an attack. And I've said this oftentimes. We see a major discrepancy between what the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee was saying about the discrepancy between what about 16 trillion naira, which is huge. The country cannot afford to close its eye on this. Right. We're talking of the discrepancy between the operating surplus and also the revenue collected through the remitter. So this is about, from what the CBN, the CBN sources, what we've been able to gather, that there is a gap of 11 trillion naira. And also, so when we look at all this, there is a need for the CBN governor to obey the principle of democracy, which is transparency and accountability, by honoring the call from the House of Representatives. Otherwise, it will seem that they are preventing full disclosure, like you mentioned.
Okay, so let's go to the international headlines. Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, you know, received her prize. Well, her daughter received it on her behalf, and she had to travel secretly Oslo.
Yes, well, she is the Venezuelan opposition leader, and I think we can see the visuals there with her daughter receiving the Nobel Peace Prize on her behalf. Now, this woman has been in hiding for months under a travel ban. We spoke about it earlier in the report that we took, and she has spent years apart from her children and the dangers of escaping Venezuela. Mercado has several supporters, although there's been a lot of criticism about this Nobel Peace Prize, and it's likely the winning of it is likely a confirmation of her decade-long struggle. So I mean, there's a lot of opposing opinions on whether she deserves this, whether she should have received it. But like I said, after a decade long of fighting for the rights of her people, and as well, I think her daughter dedicated this Nobel Peace Prize to the people of Venezuela. I think it's a worthy prize.
I mean, it's a big recognition of her courage.
Indeed it is. Yes, it is.
You have to be courageous to be an opposition leader in a country such as Venezuela,
yes,
where human rights is trampled upon. So for a woman, and she's been doing this for a couple of years now, this is a big recognition of all the risks that she's taking,
yes,
risks to her family, risks to herself, risks to everything that she knows about. And truly, some will say, some criticize it, but some also say she deserves the honor, and that's what the world has to do for someone who is fighting in a repressive regime. And that also throws the searchlight on that crisis between the U.S. and Venezuela.
A never-ending crisis.
Yes, with President Trump trying
yes,
to start another war, in his backyard with the president there. So yes, we don't know. It's an evolving story, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, those were your headlines today.
Thank you.